Why were they looking at her like that? Why did every uniformed man at the checkpoint suddenly fall silent? Captain Maya Reeves stood beneath the unforgiving Afghan sun, her boots sunk half an inch into the dust. Heat shimmered across the forward operating base, making the concrete barriers tremble in the distance like ghosts of the desert. She had been gone for 3 years off the grid, beyond the reach of command, of orders, of home. And now, the moment she stepped back onto American-controlled soil, they put her in handcuffs. The young lieutenant at the gate squinted at her ID, brows tightening as if the words themselves were a threat. "Ma'am, you're claiming to be attached to SEAL Team 6. His voice was half disbelief, half accusation. "There are no female SEALs." Maya didn't answer. Her eyes didn't even move. She stared past him toward the mountains that still smelled like smoke and betrayal. The wind shifted, lifting dust against her scarred face. The lieutenant mistook her silence for defiance. He didn't realize it was habit, trained stillness, the kind that could outlast interrogation or pain. A sergeant stepped forward, holding something in gloved hands. "Sir, she's carrying a Fairbairn Sykes knife. Custom modifications, not standard issue. Serial been filed off, but there's a marking." The lieutenant frowned and turned the blade over. Sunlight caught the metal and revealed an engraving, a phoenix rising from flames, carved into Damascus steel. That changed everything. His tone softened, confusion bleeding into his voice. "Where'd you get this, ma'am?" Still no reply. Maya's gaze never left the horizon. She was cataloging positions, weapons, numbers. She could tell which guard had rotated early, which camera had a dead zone. Reflexes honed by years of being hunted. "Take her to detention," the lieutenant ordered at last, "and call it up the chain." As they led her away, the zip-tie cuffs biting into her wrists, Maya didn't resist. She counted steps, 48 from checkpoint to the gate, another 67 to the detention block. She could already see 5 ways out if she needed them, but she wasn't worried about escape. She was worried about the people still out there, Lieutenant Kira Ortiz and Sergeant Danny Wilson, her team, her family, 3 years in the dark, waiting for a signal that never came. The cell they gave her was small, steel walls, cot, a single flickering bulb. It smelled of sweat and bleach. Maya sat down, spine straight, conserving energy. She replayed the mission in her head for the 1,000th time. Operation Athena. It wasn't supposed to exist. 12 women, each from a different branch. Rangers, Marines, pilots, cryptologists, hand-picked, quietly reassigned, trained alongside SEAL candidates but classified under a different name. They were designed for the kinds of missions where men drew too much attention, where a woman could pass through unnoticed, where stealth meant survival. The program was General Arthur Hayes's creation, built on the belief that invisibility was power. Only 20 people in the world knew Athena existed, and Maya Reeves had been one of its ghosts. Their final mission had been simple on paper: extract Dr. Farida Nazari, a nuclear physicist kidnapped by a terrorist cell. Intel confirmed her location in a remote village, but when they arrived, she was gone. What followed was 3 years of shadow work, false names, deep cover, blood spilled across borders no one admitted existed. They'd found her eventually, but the cost was too high. Maya touched the scar along her jaw, a warlord's bullet, inches from her carotid, a reminder that survival wasn't the same as victory. The door opened without warning. Heavy boots echoed. She didn't look up. "Captain Reeves," a deep voice said, "you've caused quite a stir." She raised her eyes. A man in desert fatigue stood in the doorway, older, solid, the kind of authority that didn't need rank to be respected. His uniform read Maddox. "I'm General James Maddox," he said, "and I think you and I need to talk." He stepped into the light, holding the same knife the lieutenant had been afraid to touch. "That weapon," he said quietly, "has a very distinctive pommel, phoenix rising from flames. Only 12 were ever made, and I gave every one of them to the original Athena team." Maya's heartbeat didn't change, but something behind her eyes flickered. Recognition. Pain. The kind that comes when ghosts are named aloud. General Maddox unlocked the cell himself. "We thought you were dead, Captain, all of you." Her voice was a rasp, low from disuse. "Sir, my team is still out there, and they're running out of time." They walked together through the corridors of the base. Soldiers moved aside, whispering as they passed. Some saluted, unsure why. Others just stared at the woman with no insignia, escorted by a general. Maddox said nothing until they reached a secure briefing room deep underground. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Maps of the Hindu Kush covered the walls. 3 officers waited inside, 2 colonels and a major. Suspicion hung heavy in the air. "Gentlemen," Maddox began, "this is Captain Reeves, Athena program." That name froze the room. A beat of silence. One of the colonels frowned. "General, with all due respect, Athena's a myth. We've heard rumors, nothing official." "Consider this official," Maddox said. "Her intel takes priority. Clear the room of anyone non-essential." When the doors finally sealed, Maya placed her battered field notebook on the table. The cover was stained, the corners burned. She opened it to a map drawn in fading pencil. "My team split after the ambush at Khyber Pass," she said. "Lieutenant Ortiz took Dr. Nazari south. Sergeant Wilson went east to create a diversion. I tracked the cell's leadership north to recover stolen research." Her voice remained steady, but her hand trembled slightly as she traced the routes. Pain she hadn't let herself feel for years pressed behind her ribs. "Wilson's last transmission came from this valley 3 weeks ago," she continued. "She said she'd found intel on a new facility, then nothing. Radio silence." Colonel Harrington leaned forward. "Captain, forgive my skepticism, but we have no way to verify anything you're saying." Maya looked up, eyes sharp as a rifle's sight. "The same way you verified my knife, Colonel. Call Admiral Westmoreland. Authorization code Sierra Echo Alpha Lima 9. Harrington hesitated, then stepped aside to make the call. The room was quiet except for the low hum of the fluorescent light and the sound of Maddox's slow breathing. She'd forgotten how strange it felt to be among uniforms again, to stand in a place that smelled like polished steel instead of dust and blood. A flicker of nausea twisted in her chest. Home, and not home at all. When Harrington returned, his face had changed. Respect, maybe even fear. "Admiral confirms," he said softly. "Athena existed, 12 operatives, all presumed KIA." Maya didn't smile. She just marked another point on the map. "Then let's bring the rest home." Maddox leaned over the table. "Captain, our intel suggests a major operation underway. High-value targets are converging in this region. Is this connected to your mission?" Before she could answer, the door burst open. A young intel officer rushed in, breathless, pale. "Sir, Intercept just came in. They've captured an American woman matching Sergeant Wilson's description." He hesitated, glancing at Maya. "They're planning a public execution in 12 hours. Time froze. Maddox swore under his breath. Officers barked orders, phones lit up, radios crackled to life. Maya didn't move. Her pulse slowed instead of rising. "They want us to come," she said softly. "It's a trap." Harrington turned on her. "How can you possibly know that?" She reached into her pocket and slid a worn photograph across the table. The image was creased, almost faded. A man in uniform, sharp eyes, confident smile. "Because I know who's running their operation now." Maddox's expression hardened as he read the name printed beneath the picture. Major Thomas Reed, U.S. Army Special Forces, reported KIA 2 years ago. Maya's voice dropped to a whisper. "He was my trainer in the Athena program. He knows our tactics, our extraction patterns. He's been hunting us ever since we learned he sold Dr. Nazari's location to the enemy." "A traitor?" Harrington asked. "Worse," she replied. "He thinks he's a patriot." The satellite phone on the table chirped, slicing through the tension. Harrington answered, listening. His knuckles whitened as he held the receiver. When he hung up, the air seemed to thin. "They just sent a message," he said. "They'll trade Sergeant Wilson for you. No military intervention. Any attempt and she dies." No one spoke. Maya finally stood, her movements deliberate, controlled. "I'll need a helicopter, minimal gear, no trackers." Harrington blinked. "That's suicide." "No," she said, strapping her knife to her thigh again. "It's what I was trained for." She paused, eyes meeting Maddox's. "But I need one thing first." "What's that, Captain?" "The truth," she said, "about why Athena was really created. Because Reed didn't sell us out for money. He did it because of what we were designed to do." Maddox hesitated, the weight of 1,000 classified sins pressing on his shoulders. "You already know, don't you?" Her silence was answer enough. The room darkened as the sun dipped below the horizon outside, casting the base in amber light. Engines rumbled somewhere on the tarmac, the sound of rotors winding up. Maya Reeves turned toward the window, the distant mountains burning in the last glow of day. Somewhere out there, her team was bleeding, waiting, counting on her to come. She exhaled slowly, the sound almost like a prayer. "This isn't about orders anymore," she thought. "It's about finishing what we started." Why was the air so quiet before a mission like this? Not the kind of silence that comforts. The kind that listens. The wind scraped across the tarmac as the helicopter blades began to spin, their rhythm pulsing through the night like a heartbeat. The base lights burned low, no witnesses, no paperwork. Just the kind of darkness the Athena program had always lived inside. Captain Maya Reeves stood at the open hangar bay, the desert air tugging at her hair. Her gear was stripped to essentials: a suppressed sidearm, a combat knife, 2 flashbangs, 1 encrypted comm unit. No insignia, no name tape, just shadows and breath. "Ma'am, last chance to change your mind," the pilot said, his voice almost drowned out by the engine. "Orders say you're going in solo." "There are no orders," Maya replied quietly. "Just time running out." She climbed aboard, gripping the cold metal frame. General Maddox was waiting near the chopper's nose, his face drawn in the red wash of warning lights. The man looked older than he had an hour ago, older than the uniform on his chest. "I can't stop you," he said, "but I can make sure someone knows why you did it." Maya met his eyes. "Then tell them this wasn't about revenge. Tell them it was about duty, the kind they don't put in the manuals." Maddox nodded once, jaw tight. "Bring her home." The door slid shut, sealing her into the hum of machinery and memory. As the helicopter lifted off, the base shrank to a scattering of yellow dots below, swallowed by the endless black of the mountains. The Hindu Kush was a wound in the earth, a landscape carved by centuries of storms and war. The moon spilled silver over the ridgelines as the helicopter cut low through the valleys, the pilot threading between peaks like a ghost. Maya checked her watch. She'd have a 20-minute window before sunrise. Wilson's execution was scheduled for dawn. Her thumb brushed the phoenix emblem carved into her knife. Once, it had been a badge of something beautiful, a promise that women like her could serve unseen but not unvalued. Now it felt like a brand. "ETA 5 mics, the pilot said over the intercom. "You sure about the LZ? Terrain looks nasty." "That's why they won't expect it," she answered. She smiled faintly, a habit left over from a time when danger still felt like purpose. The bird flared low, blades throwing dust across the cliffside. Maya jumped before it fully settled, landing hard on the rock. She didn't look back. The helicopter disappeared into the mist, its sound swallowed by the mountains. Then there was only silence again. The kind that waited. She adjusted her scope, scanning the valley below. 6 guards. 1 watchtower. A single light flickering inside the abandoned Soviet outpost. That would be Reed's style. No spectacle, no mercy. Maya crouched behind a rock, her breath steady, her heart strangely calm. Years of training, muscle memory wrapped in steel nerves. But beneath it all was something more dangerous, the pull of familiarity. Reed had been her instructor, her commanding officer, her mentor. He had been the voice in her ear teaching her how to disappear. Now he was the reason her team had been left to die. She closed her eyes for half a second, whispering to no one, "Kira, Danny, hold on." Then she moved. Her body flowed through the terrain like shadow on water. One guard down, knife to the throat, quiet as exhale. Another dropped under the weight of her arm, limp before his rifle hit the ground. The third heard the scuffle, turned too late and met the same silence. 3 down. 3 to go. Each step forward carried echoes of the past, Reed's voice in her memory, barking lessons across the obstacle course in Coronado. Speed means nothing if you can't breathe through fear. Pain is just intel, listen to it. She had, and it had shaped her into the ghost she was now. Maya found the basement hatch unguarded. Typical. Reed wanted her to come inside, wanted her alive long enough to hear whatever truth he thought she'd understand. She descended quietly. The stench of sweat and metal hit first. Chains. Blood. A body slumped against a pipe, Sergeant Danny Wilson. Her heart cracked in a way no bullet could replicate. "Danny," she whispered. Wilson lifted her head, one eye swollen shut, lips split. "Maya," her voice trembled between disbelief and relief. "You God they said you were." "Don't waste breath." Maya knelt, cutting through the restraints. The metal clanged softly. "Can you move?" Barely. Wilson's fingers were shaking, but the fire in her eyes was still there. "He's upstairs. Said he was waiting for you." Of course he was. Always 2 steps ahead. Maya handed Wilson her spare sidearm. "Extraction East Ridge. 15 minutes, you'll see the flare." "What about you?" Maya's expression was the same she'd worn on every mission, composure layered over grief. "I need to finish this." Wilson caught her wrist. "Maya, if you don't, then you get out, that's an order." Wilson hesitated, then nodded. Operators didn't argue when time was bleeding out. Maya slipped through the corridors like smoke, her boots barely whispering against the concrete. The stairwell opened into what had once been a command room, maps curling on the walls, shattered monitors, a radio still hissing with static. At the far end, silhouetted against a window glowing with pre-dawn light, stood Major Thomas Reed. He didn't turn, didn't need to. "Right on schedule," he said. Maya raised her weapon. "It's over, Thomas." He chuckled softly. "That's what you said the day they disbanded Athena. Remember, it's over. But it never is, Captain, not for people like us. Dr. Nazari's safe. Her research is secure. Whatever you were planning dies here." Reed finally faced her. The man she remembered was gone, replaced by a stranger with a scar running from temple to jaw, his eyes sunken with purpose. "Is that what they told you?" he said, almost kindly. "That I betrayed my country?" Maya kept her aim steady, but something inside her wavered. "You sold her location. You got my team killed." He took a step closer, unarmed. "No, Maya, I tried to save her, save all of you." She scoffed. "By handing us to terrorists." Reed smiled sadly. "By revealing what Athena really was." The words slid through the room like a blade. He paced slowly, voice low. "You think we were heroes, don't you? We weren't rescuers. We were weapons. The first test subjects for covert assassinations, targets in government crosshairs that needed to disappear quietly. Dr. Nazari's research wasn't a threat to the world, it was a threat to them, to the men funding those bombs." "Lies," Maya whispered, but her pulse betrayed her. Because part of her had always wondered. "Why do you think we were erased from every database?" Reed pressed. "Why there are no records, no commendations, no graves with our names? They built us for deniability, Maya. Then they buried us. She shook her head, taking a step back, the pistol trembling for the first time. They wouldn't. They did, Reed said softly. And now you have a choice. Keep fighting ghosts or help me expose them. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Distant thunder. Not thunder, rotor fire. Maya's heart snapped back into focus. Extraction team, she muttered. They came early. Reed's smile faded. Then I guess this is where we see what kind of operator you really are. He lunged, fast, too fast for a man his age. They collided, the pistol skidding across the floor. He swung. She ducked. They moved like two halves of the same training reel, every motion anticipated, every strike countered. He slammed her into a desk. Pain shot through her ribs. She grabbed the nearest weapon, her knife, and drove it forward. It stopped an inch from his throat. Do it, Reed hissed. Finish your mission like you were trained. Her hands shook, not from weakness, from memory. All the missions, all the silent kills, all the lies she'd believed were for the greater good. No, she said. The building shook again. Shrapnel burst from the wall. Reed rolled free as Maya dove behind a console. The quick reaction force had opened fire. They were flattening the compound. She looked up. He was gone. Smoke thickened. Fire climbed the walls. Somewhere outside she heard Wilson shouting her name. Maya, go. Maya stumbled through the corridor, lungs burning. She reached the exit just as the roof collapsed behind her, a rain of sparks lighting the night. The helicopter waited beyond the ridge, Wilson leaning out with her arm extended. Maya ran. Every muscle screamed, but she didn't stop. She grabbed Wilson's hand, hauled herself aboard as the chopper lifted, the compound exploding below. She looked back once, through the swirling dust and fire. There was no sign of Reed. Only a shadow moving into the smoke, disappearing as if he'd never existed. Hours later, the medics worked in silence. Wilson slept under morphine. Maya sat alone by the open ramp, the horizon just beginning to pale with dawn. She hadn't spoken since they'd lifted off. General Maddox's voice crackled through the radio. Captain Reeves, do you copy? She pressed the transmitter. Copy, sir. Wilson's alive thanks to you, but we have a problem. We found Reed's personal transmitter in the wreckage. It was still broadcasting. Maya frowned. Broadcasting what? The location of every Athena operative still unaccounted for. Her blood went cold. Kira. Yes, Maddox said grimly. We've lost her signal. She may already be compromised. Maya closed her eyes. The sunrise bled across the desert, staining everything gold and red. It was beautiful in the way endings often are. She whispered to herself, voice soft, breaking. I can't lose another. The radio hissed. Maddox's voice came through again, low but steady. Captain, what do you want to do? Maya looked down at the phoenix emblem in her hand, thumb brushing the carved wings. We go after her, she said, all of them until this is finished. And then quieter to herself. Because sometimes the only way to clear your name is to burn the lie that made it. The helicopter banked toward the rising sun. Dust rose in long ribbons behind them, and in the silence between the rotor beats, you could almost hear it, the heartbeat of a soldier who refused to vanish. Why did the desert always smell like endings? Maybe it was the metal in the wind, maybe the blood beneath the sand. The helicopter cut low over the mountains, the engine groaning against thin air. Inside, the world was noise and silence all at once. Captain Maya Reeves sat near the open ramp, eyes on the horizon. The sun had risen, harsh and merciless, spilling gold across a landscape that had buried too many names. Sergeant Wilson was awake now, her face pale, wrapped in gauze and exhaustion. You should rest, Maya said softly. Wilson gave a weak laugh. Can't sleep when you're chasing ghosts. Maya turned toward the pilot. We're diverting course. Set heading 019. The pilot hesitated. That's straight into enemy territory, ma'am. I know. General Maddox's voice cracked over the radio. Reeves, this isn't a rescue op. Command wants you grounded until further. She reached forward and switched the radio off. Wilson's eyebrows lifted. You just hung up on a general. Wouldn't be the first time. There was a pause. The air between them thickened with unspoken memories, the kind that binds soldiers tighter than friendship ever could. Finally, Wilson spoke again. If Reed's transmission was meant to expose Athena operatives, then Kira's not the only one in danger. Maya nodded. There were 12 of us, 6 confirmed dead, 2 missing before the program was buried. That leaves 4, and Reed knows every name. Wilson shifted uncomfortably. Then we're not just saving Kira, we're racing a clock. Maya's eyes stayed fixed on the desert below, where lines of dried riverbeds cut the earth like scars. Not a clock, she murmured, a countdown. They landed 20 clicks north of Torkham Pass, near an abandoned logistics route that hadn't seen use since the Soviets fled. The valley was quiet, too quiet. The wind carried no voices, no signs of life, just the soft hiss of dust moving through broken fences. Maya disembarked first, rifle sweeping the horizon. The silence pressed on her like weight. Something about the terrain felt wrong, too clean, too arranged. She crouched and touched the ground. Beneath the sand she felt steel. Tracks, heavy ones. Convoy, she whispered, recent. Wilson joined her. Think it's Reed. Or the people he's protecting. She adjusted her scope, scanning westward. Either way, we find out. They moved fast and low, staying between shadows. Maya's body moved on instinct, the kind that never forgot how to breathe through fear. But inside, her thoughts churned. Every step forward scraped another layer off the truth she didn't want to face. Athena had been more than a mission. It had been a belief that women could serve in the most dangerous operations not because they were exceptions, but because they were essential. And now that belief felt like a weapon turned inward. She remembered the day Reed had pinned the Phoenix badge to her uniform. Fire destroys, he'd said, but it also purifies. Now she wondered which one she had been meant for. By midday, they found what they were looking for, an outpost dug into the side of a ridge, camouflaged with scavenged tarps and debris. A single drone circled overhead. The pattern was military, U.S. manufactured, repurposed. Maya's jaw tightened. They're using our tech. Wilson checked her weapon. You think Reed's running this? Maya scanned the valley below. Not Reed, someone funding him. Private contractors. Worse, she said, people with clearance. They waited until dusk. When the shadows grew long enough to hide their approach, Maya signaled. 2 figures moved as one. Through her scope, she saw the first guard light a cigarette. The flicker of flame was all she needed. 2 shots suppressed clean. The guard slumped. His partner turned too late. Maya and Wilson moved in silence, ghosts through the perimeter fence. They breached the inner compound without a single alarm, but as Maya entered the main building, she froze. On the wall hung a flag, not military, not national. Black background, a phoenix emblem, silver wings outstretched. Her stomach dropped. It wasn't a symbol of defiance. It was a brand. Wilson's voice broke the silence. Maya, what is this? Maya stepped closer. Beneath the emblem were 12 names, most crossed out in red. Only 3 remained. Reeves, Ortiz, Wilson. A low voice spoke from the shadows. You were always hard to kill. Maya spun, weapon raised. Kira Ortiz stood in the doorway, alive, uniform torn, rifle slung low. Her hair was shorter now, streaked with dirt and ash, but her eyes still burned the same. Kira, Maya breathed. Ortiz smiled faintly. You're late. The relief hit like a gut punch. Maya crossed the room and gripped her friend's shoulders. We thought. Captured almost, Kira's expression darkened. They wanted me alive. Why? Kira hesitated, glancing at the flag on the wall. Because I found out who funds Athena. Maya frowned. Reed. Kira shook her head. No, Reed was a tool. The real architect sits in Washington. The words hit like ice. Wilson stepped forward. You're saying Command knew they used us? Kira nodded. Every op, every target we neutralized. They weren't threats, they were obstacles. Scientists, whistleblowers, journalists. Anyone digging too close to defense contracts or intelligence laundering. Maya's voice cracked for the first time. We killed civilians. Not directly. We gave the coordinates, others did the work, but it was enough. The silence that followed was suffocating. 3 women who had bled for their country, suddenly unsure what they'd been bleeding for. Finally Wilson spoke, voice trembling. So what now? Kira turned to Maya. We finish what Reed started, we expose it. Maya's eyes hardened. Reed's not our ally, he's a murderer. Kira met her gaze. Maybe, but he's the only one with proof. The sound of engines interrupted them, a deep rumble rolling through the valley. Maya ran to the window. Headlights, a convoy of armored trucks winding toward the compound. Wilson swore under her breath. How the hell did they find us? Kira's expression was unreadable. They didn't, I called them. Maya stared at her. You did what? They have Reed in custody, Kira said. He's being transported to a black site east of the ridge. I made a deal. They promised extraction if I delivered you too. Wilson raised her weapon instantly. You sold us out. Kira didn't flinch. I bought us a chance. Maya stepped between them. Put it down, both of you. Ma'am, she betrayed. I said stand down. The roar of the convoy grew louder. Dust clouds swallowed the horizon. Maya turned back to Kira, her voice barely above a whisper. Why? Kira's eyes softened, pain flickering beneath defiance. Because if they kill Reed before we get to him, the truth dies with him. Maya's breath caught. She understood. The deal had been suicide from the start. Kira was gambling that Maya would save them all, even her. She looked at Wilson. Pack up, we move. Ma'am, that's not a request. They scrambled through the rear exit as the first trucks reached the gate. Floodlights pierced the night, cutting through the compound. Gunfire erupted. Bullets chewed through concrete. Maya led them into the ravine behind the ridge, using the terrain for cover. They ran until the noise faded, lungs burning, boots slipping on loose rock. When they finally stopped, the night was so quiet it rang. Wilson dropped beside a boulder, gasping. Now what? Maya crouched, scanning the distant road through her scope. Convoys heading east, that's our next target. Kira wiped blood from her cheek. You're going after them. Maya, they'll have a full escort. I don't care, Maya said. Reed's alive, and if he's being taken to a black site, then we're not done yet. Wilson leaned back, shaking her head. We can't fight the whole dam system. No, Maya said quietly, but we can make them afraid of the people they erased. The 3 women sat in silence for a moment, the desert wind curling around them like breath. Kira broke it softly. Do you ever think about home? Maya didn't look up. Every time I close my eyes. Would you go back if you could? Maya's answer came like a confession. Not until I know what I went away for. Hours later, they reached a ruined watchtower overlooking the main road. Below, headlights drifted across the darkness, the convoy, moving slow and methodical. Maya knelt beside Kira, setting her rifle on the ledge. If we hit the lead truck, we buy ourselves 2 minutes, long enough to extract Reed. Wilson glanced between them, and then what? Then, Maya said, we decide if he deserves to live. The words hung in the air like smoke. Kira adjusted her scope. You really think he'll talk? He'll talk, Maya said, checking her magazine. He owes us the truth. The trucks drew closer, engines rumbling, soldiers visible in the turret lights. Maya took a slow breath. The sound of her heartbeat filled the space between seconds. "On my mark," she whispered. 3, 2. A single shot split the night. The lead truck erupted into flame. Shouts echoed, searchlights flared. Maya and her team moved like phantoms down the slope, firelight painting their faces gold. For a moment, just a moment, it felt like the old missions again, before betrayal, before the lies. And then through the smoke she saw him. Reed. Bound, bruised. Alive. Their eyes met across the chaos, soldier and ghost, teacher and student, both carrying too much history. He smiled faintly, even as guards shoved him toward cover. "You never quit, do you?" Maya's voice was lost in the roar of gunfire, but her eyes said everything. "No, not until it's finished." That night, as they hid among the dunes with Reed restrained beside them, the desert stretched endless and indifferent. The stars burned like cold witnesses above. Reed coughed, blood on his lip. "You shouldn't have come." Maya looked at him, the desert wind whispering through her hair. "You shouldn't have left us." He laughed low and broken. "Still following orders, Captain." "No," she said, eyes sharp and steady. "I'm following the truth." Reed stared at her for a long time, then smiled, the sad kind that comes before confession. "Then you'd better be ready for it," he said, "because once you know, you'll never serve anyone again." The fire cracked between them, and in the quiet the desert listened. Why did the truth always come at night? Maybe because lies can't stand the dark. The fire between them had burned low, just enough to paint the outlines of their faces. Captain Maya Reeves sat across from Major Thomas Reed, her weapon resting loosely in her lap but her finger still near the trigger. Wilson kept watch from the ridge above, while Kira Ortiz cleaned her rifle in silence, her eyes never leaving Reed. The air was thin, cold enough to bite through their sleeves. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Or maybe it was just the wind, everything here sounded like ghosts. Reed broke the silence first. "You always were the quiet one, Maya. Even in training, never bragged, never blinked." He smiled faintly. "Guess that's why you were the best of them." Maya didn't return it. Flattery, a poor currency when you're in chains. He shrugged, the cuffs rattling softly. "You think those will hold me if I don't want them to?" Kira looked up. "Try it." Reed chuckled under his breath and leaned back, eyes on the stars. "Still loyal, I see. Still believing there's a right side in all this." Maya studied him. "Start talking, who's funding you?" He glanced at her, his smile fading. "You mean who funded us?" The fire popped, sending a flare of orange across his face. He took a slow breath before speaking again. Athena was never just a combat program. It was a proof of concept, a demonstration that you could take soldiers, erase their public identity, and deploy them anywhere under deniable command. No uniforms, no records, no oversight. Kira's jaw tightened. "That's not new. Black ops exist in every branch." Reed nodded. "True, but not like this. Athena wasn't controlled by the Pentagon. It was outsourced, run by a private consortium of defense executives and intelligence brokers. The kind of people who move wars like chess pieces." Maya's eyes narrowed. "You're saying we were mercenaries?" "No," Reed looked at her. "You were prototypes." Wilson descended the slope quietly, catching the last of his words. "Prototypes for what?" Reed's voice dropped to a whisper. "For soldiers who don't question orders because they don't know who they serve." The silence after that was sharp enough to cut skin. Maya stared into the fire. She could still hear the old briefings echoing in her head, the talk of service, sacrifice, honor, all the speeches that had felt holy once. "How long did you know?" she asked finally. "Long enough to see what it was becoming," Reed said. "I tried to pull the plug. They made sure the reports disappeared. So I leaked intel, forced the mission that got us all burned. Maya's voice hardened. You sold us out. My team died because of you. I did what I had to do to expose it, he snapped, anger flaring in his eyes. You think anyone would have believed me otherwise? A dead traitor's story doesn't change the world, but a ghost program unraveling from within, that gets attention. Kira stepped closer. And all those people who died, the civilians, the informants, collateral. Reed looked at her, guilt bleeding through the cracks of his voice. I didn't expect it to go that far. Maya stood. The firelight caught the scar along her jaw, a glint of steel where flesh met shadow. You talk like you were saving us, she said, but you turned us into bait. Reed didn't deny it. Yes, because I knew the only way they'd break cover is if they came for you. Wilson spat into the dirt. You're insane. Maybe, he said quietly, but you're all still alive, aren't you? They'll come again, they have to, and when they do, you'll have a chance to bring it all down. Maya studied him, her thoughts circling like wolves. His words had the ring of madness, but also something worse, truth. Because part of her remembered the missions that never appeared on any debrief, the orders that arrived without a name, the operations where the targets were too clean, too convenient. She whispered, if what you're saying is true, then there are people in Washington who will kill to keep it buried. Reed smiled faintly. They already have. The fire burned to ash. Dawn crept in slow and blue, painting the ridges with cold light. Maya hadn't slept. None of them had. Kira sat wrapped in her jacket, staring at nothing. Wilson cleaned her weapon with mechanical precision, her hands steady, her eyes hollow. When Reed spoke again, his voice was low and careful. There's a data cache, proof of every operation, every name, every payout. It's stored in a safe house north of Kabul under the guise of a humanitarian office. I can get you in. Maya frowned. Why should we trust you? Because I built it, he said simply, and because they'll kill me before they let you find it. Kira's tone turned sharp. And what happens after we get the data? You disappear again. Reed's gaze lingered on her. After that, none of us disappear, not anymore. Wilson snorted softly. That sounds like suicide. Maybe it is, Maya said, but sometimes suicide's just another word for refusing to be erased. She stood shouldering her pack. We move in 1 hour. The route to Kabul cut through canyons that looked carved by giants. The sun burned white overhead, reflecting off jagged rock. They moved in pairs, Kira on point, Wilson rear guard. Reed walked under watch, his wrists still bound. He didn't complain. He just kept moving, his steps slow but certain. By afternoon, the wind carried the scent of smoke. Villages in the valley below smoldered, collateral damage from a drone strike. Maya stopped, scanning the horizon. Reed's voice came softly from behind her. That strike wasn't ours. I didn't say it was. But you were thinking it, he said. Athena taught you to recognize patterns. You can tell when violence isn't random. She looked back at him. You think this is connected? I know it is. They're erasing evidence, burning every piece that leads to us. Maya's chest tightened. For a moment, she imagined what it would feel like to walk into the city and find their history scrubbed clean. No files, no names, no trace. Just 12 ghosts and a lie that survived them all. She whispered, almost to herself, if I expose this, I lose everything I ever served for. Reed's answer was quiet, almost kind. Then maybe it's time you served something else. They reached the outskirts of Kabul by nightfall, a sprawl of dim lights and quiet streets. The safe house stood behind an old orphanage, disguised under a non-profit signage. Maya studied it through her binoculars. 2 guards at the gate, 1 vehicle, no visible reinforcements. Looks clear, Wilson murmured. Nothing about this is clear, Maya said. She turned to Reed. You're sure this is it? He nodded. 4th floor, room 408, coded safe in the wall, thumbprint recognition. Kira frowned. Yours or theirs? Mine. They breached just after midnight, swift, silent. Wilson took the ground floor, disabling the security feed. Kira swept the second and third. Maya followed Reed up the stairs, her knife drawn. The building smelled of dust and old paper. Somewhere in the distance, a baby cried, the orphanage below still awake under flickering lights. At the top of the stairs, Reed paused. It's in here. Maya stepped past him, clearing the room. Empty. A single desk, a cabinet, a cracked window looking out over the city. Reed crossed to the far wall and pressed his thumb against a small panel hidden behind peeling wallpaper. A section of the wall clicked open, revealing a steel safe. He entered a code, the lock released. Inside was a single hard drive, marked with the Athena emblem, the phoenix rising from flame. Maya felt her throat tighten. This is it. Reed nodded. Every operation, every name, yours included. Before she could speak, a laser dot flickered across the wall, then another. Down, Maya shouted. The windows exploded inward. Bullets tore through the room. Reed dove behind the desk, shouting something she couldn't hear. Kira returned fire from the hallway, the air filled with dust and splinters. Wilson's voice crackled over comms. Contact front and rear. Multiple hostiles, tactical pattern, they knew we were coming. Maya grabbed the drive and shoved it into her vest. Move now. They fought their way down the stairwell, gunfire echoing like thunder. The front entrance was gone, smoke and rubble. They turned for the alley, sprinting through debris as tracer rounds lit the night. A black SUV skidded across the street, blocking their exit. A figure stepped out, clean uniform, night vision goggles, American gear. Not insurgents. Contractors. Athena's ghosts wearing new names. The man raised his weapon. Captain Reeves, stand down, that's government property. Maya leveled her rifle. You mean evidence. Orders are to retrieve it by any means. Behind her, Reed's voice cut through the chaos. Run. He lunged forward, tackling the man before he could fire. The two crashed into the SUV, struggling. Shots rang out. Reed fell, blood blooming across his chest. Maya froze, her hand reaching for him. Go, he gasped, blood bubbling on his lips. Finish it. For a moment she couldn't move. All the rage, the betrayal, the weight of years came crashing down. Then Wilson's hand gripped her arm. Maya. She turned and ran. They disappeared into the back alleys as sirens wailed, bullets chasing their shadows. When they finally stopped, the hard drive pressed cold against her chest, its weight heavier than anything she'd ever carried. Kira's breathing was ragged. Reed's gone. Maya didn't answer. She looked toward the horizon, the city lights flickering beneath the smoke. Somewhere out there, the truth waited. But so did everyone who wanted it buried. She whispered, we don't stop now, not after this. Wilson glanced at the blood on Maya's sleeve. Ma'am, you're hit. Maya looked down, almost surprised. A graze deep but not mortal. She pressed her hand against it, voice steady. Pain's just intel, she murmured. Listen to it. Reed's old words, the circle closing. Kira turned toward her. Where to now? Maya looked east, toward the mountains, where dawn was beginning to climb the ridges. Somewhere they can't reach us, she said, until we decide who deserves the truth. The three women melted into the shadows, leaving behind smoke, blood, and the echo of a man who died believing in redemption. That night, as they found shelter in the ruins of an old compound, Maya finally let herself feel it, the weight of survival. Reed had died buying them a second chance. The data drive hummed softly in her hands, a heartbeat of secrets too heavy to hold. She stared at the tiny phoenix etched on its casing and whispered, almost to herself. They built us to vanish. Maybe it's time the world finally saw what they made. The stars overhead seemed to burn brighter for a moment, as if listening. But the desert gave no answers. Only wind. Only silence. Why does silence feel loud after a gunfight? Because it's the only thing that tells you you're still alive. The ruins gave them shelter but not comfort. The compound was half collapsed, the walls cracked like old bone. A windstorm moved through the valley, carrying grit that scraped against their faces, whispering through the holes where windows once were. Captain Maya Reeves sat on the floor, back against the wall, blood still seeping through the bandage on her arm. Across from her, Kira Ortiz was rigging a small solar charger to a battered laptop. Sergeant Danny Wilson cleaned her weapon in silence, her movements methodical, ritualistic, the way soldiers keep their hands busy when their minds are breaking. Between them, the hard drive gleamed faintly in the flicker of a lantern. The phoenix emblem on its casing caught the light, like fire refusing to die. Maya finally spoke. How long until it boots? Kira didn't look up. Depends if this thing still wants to cooperate. Old encryption pre-quantum. Reed wasn't playing games. Wilson exhaled slowly. He's dead because of it. Maya's eyes lifted. He's dead because we trusted too many people. No one answered. The storm howled outside, rattling the metal sheets overhead. For a moment it sounded like applause, cruel mocking. Kira broke the silence. If what's on that drive proves everything he said, the black funding, the assassinations, do we even want to open it? Maya's gaze lingered on the drive. Wanting doesn't matter, knowing does. By morning, the storm had passed. The world outside was painted gray and raw. Kira's laptop hummed, decoding line by line. Each file revealed more pieces. Mission reports, ghost signatures, payment ledgers routed through shell companies. It was all there, the entire shadow chain of Athena. Wilson leaned over Kira's shoulder, her jaw tightening as lines of text scrolled past. Jesus, these aren't targets, they're civilians. Journalists, Kira added, scrolling faster. Human rights investigators, even embassy contractors. Maya felt her stomach twist. They called them high-risk assets, HRA designations. Wilson looked up sharply. You knew. I suspected, Maya said softly. There were missions that didn't fit. We were told it was intel transfer, counter-intel retrieval, no-kill orders, but the follow-up silence, it felt wrong. Kira clicked another folder. A video feed opened a black and white surveillance from a drone. A convoy ambushed in the desert. She froze it mid-frame, zoomed in. A figure stepped from the wreckage, bleeding but alive. Maya Reeves. Wilson's voice trembled. They filmed you. Kira scrolled further. Metadata appeared. Operation Eidolon. Target Dr. Farida Nazari. Asset R47 Reeves. Maya's pulse slowed until she felt nothing at all. They cataloged us. Every mission, every kill, every name. We weren't soldiers. We were statistics. Wilson slammed her hand against the wall. So that's it. Years of service turned into numbers on a screen. Kira's voice cracked. They called it proof of concept. Maya closed the laptop. The sudden darkness of the monitor made the room feel colder. Get ready to move. They'll track the power signal. Wilson hesitated. Where? North, Maya said. We need a place with comms range. I know someone, civilian contact, journalist. If anyone can leak this without burying it, it's her. Kira frowned. You're talking about going public. Yes. Then we're done, Wilson said flatly. You know what happens if we leak classified data, treason, court-martial, life sentences if they don't kill us first. Maya looked at her, calm and absolute. Then they'll have to find us first. They moved through the wastelands by night, crossing what was left of old supply routes. The mountains loomed black against a bruised sky. Each step felt heavier than the last, not from fatigue, but from the weight of what they carried. By the third night, Wilson's cough had worsened. The bullet graze on her leg was festering, her breath shallow. They took shelter in a cave, overlooking the valley. Maya crouched beside her, cleaning the wound with iodine. Wilson winced, biting back a curse. Still think this is worth dying for? Maya tied the bandage tight. Dying? Easy. Living with what we know, that's the hard part. Wilson looked at her for a long moment, eyes glassy. You ever regret joining Athena? Maya hesitated. Every day I regret the things we had to do, but I don't regret why I joined. I wanted to serve. I just didn't know who I was really serving. Kira, who had been staring out toward the horizon, spoke softly. Then maybe this is how we take it back. Maya followed her gaze. The valley below was lit by a single convoy of vehicles, distant headlights threading through the dust. Not military, civilian transports, aid workers maybe, real ones. For a moment, the world didn't look broken. And then the radio crackled. Maya grabbed it, identify. Static hissed, then a familiar voice came through, warped but unmistakable. Captain Reeves, this is General Maddox. You need to listen carefully. Her heart lurched. Sir. Don't speak. They're triangulating every transmission. I don't have long. We pulled the black site records. Reed wasn't lying. Command is compromised, high level. Kira and Wilson exchanged shocked looks. Maddox's voice strained through interference. You can't leak that drive. If it goes public now, they'll brand you as rogue assets and scrub everything. You need to get it to a secure channel. I have a contact in Ramstein. CIA oversight cell. They're clean. Maya's grip tightened on the radio. Why help us? A pause, then. Because I created Athena's funding pipeline. I thought I was building heroes. I was wrong. The line cut out. Silence. Kira looked at Maya. You believe him? Maya stared at the dark radio, her thoughts a storm. I believe guilt when I hear it. Wilson spat bitterly. So what? We deliver this to the same system that made us ghosts. Trust another uniform to decide what truth deserves daylight. Maya's voice was quiet, almost mournful. We don't have a better choice. They reached the border 3 nights later. The checkpoint was abandoned, a relic from an older war. Barbed wire sagged like tired shoulders. Kira scouted ahead while Wilson limped behind, the laptop secured in her pack. Maya felt the tension in her body turn into instinct again. Every noise became threat, every silence a signal. Halfway across the riverbed, she froze. Boot prints. Fresh. Kira, she hissed, we're not alone. The crack of a rifle split the night. Bullets tore through the dry riverbank. Wilson hit the ground, cursing. Kira fired back, muzzle flashes lighting the dark. Maya dragged Wilson behind a rusted container. Snipers, Kira shouted, flank positions. Maya peered over the edge, scanning for movement. The moonlight revealed silhouettes, 4, maybe 5, moving with military precision. Not mercenaries, trained. One voice echoed through the valley, amplified by a loudspeaker. Captain Reeves, Sergeant Wilson, Lieutenant Ortiz, lay down your weapons. This is a U.S. retrieval unit. Maya shouted back, identify your commanding officer. The voice hesitated, then, Colonel Harrington. Wilson's eyes widened, the base commander. Maya's stomach sank, of course. Kira reloaded, what do we do? Maya's answer came without hesitation. We finish what we started. They moved as one, coordinated chaos. Kira drew fire while Wilson lobbed a flashbang toward the ridge. The explosion painted the night white. Maya charged forward, sliding behind an overturned vehicle. She aimed, fired, 2 hostiles down. The rest retreated to regroup. A voice shouted over the radio again, closer now. Maya, don't make this harder than it has to be. Maddox's warning echoed in her head. They'll brand you rogue assets. Maybe they already had. She turned to Kira. We need to split. You and Wilson head north to Ramstein. I'll draw them off. Wilson grabbed her arm. No, ma'am. That's an order. For a second, no one moved. Then Kira nodded, eyes fierce. "You better come back." Maya gave the faintest smile. "I always do." She ran into the open, into the gunfire, into the night that had claimed so many before her. The first bullet missed by inches. The second grazed her shoulder. She kept moving, weaving through smoke and dust until she vanished into the maze of old ruins. The last thing she heard before the world fell silent was Wilson's voice crackling over the radio. "See you on the other side, Captain." She didn't stop running until dawn. When the first light broke over the ridge, Maya collapsed against a rock, chest heaving. Her arm burned. Blood soaked her sleeve. She tore a strip of fabric and tied it tight. The desert stretched before her, endless and empty. Somewhere out there, her team was still alive. Somewhere, the truth waited to be spoken. But for now, there was only her, one ghost against the empire that built her. She pulled the phoenix knife from her thigh holster and studied the reflection of sunrise in its blade. For the first time in years, she saw her own face clearly. Not the operative, not the myth. Just a woman who had given everything to a flag that forgot her name. She whispered, "You can erase a soldier, but you can't erase what she remembers." And with that, Maya Reeves disappeared into the desert, following the faint signal of a world that no longer knew what side it was on. How do you hide from a world that taught you how to disappear? You stop being human. You become a shadow that even guilt can't follow. The desert had bled into mountains, now dry, unforgiving ridges stretching toward the horizon. For 3 days, Captain Maya Reeves had moved without sleep, traveling by night, resting in daylight caves that smelled of dust and silence. Her radio stayed off, her signal dark, her mind anything but. Each step echoed with ghosts. Reed's last words. Wilson's warning. Kira's eyes before they split, fierce, defiant, afraid. The sun rose like a wound behind her. She kept walking. When she finally stopped, it was because the landscape ended, a cliff overlooking a valley of cracked salt and wind. Below, a caravan of vehicles crawled along a dirt road, unmarked but familiar. She recognized the pattern instantly. Recon unit, tactical spacing, drones overhead. They were tracking her. Maya crouched low, peering through binoculars. On one of the trucks, a satellite dish rotated lazily, signal intercept. Another bore the insignia she'd once worn, Eagle Command Joint Task Counterintelligence. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had trained half these men. She whispered, "They're using my own playbook." The words sounded foreign. Her voice cracked from thirst. She couldn't stay still, not with eyes in the sky. She packed what little she had left. A half-empty canteen, 2 mags, Reed's phoenix knife, and the drive's duplicate chip, her only insurance. The real hard drive was with Kira and Wilson, heading west. She didn't know if they'd made it. The wind changed. A low hum rolled across the valley, drones close enough to hear. Maya ducked into a narrow canyon and started climbing, her body moving on instinct. Sweat stung her eyes. Blood pulsed against her bandaged arm. She kept moving. Always moving. By nightfall, she reached the plateau. The stars burned cold above, infinite, indifferent. She dug a small trench fire and huddled close, her hands shaking not from fear but fatigue. Somewhere in the distance, a storm brewed, black clouds forming like bruises over the earth. Maya pulled out the chip from her pocket. The phoenix emblem glimmered faintly in the firelight. She turned it over in her hand, feeling the weight of it. This tiny thing, smaller than a coin, held every lie, every secret, every ghost of the Athena program. Proof that they had been used, discarded, rewritten into history as myth. She thought of the others, the women whose names had been crossed out on that flag. Some of them had families. Some didn't even have graves. Her throat tightened. For years, she'd believed that silence was duty, that loyalty meant obedience. But loyalty without truth wasn't duty, it was slavery. The fire hissed as the wind picked up. She whispered, barely audible. You turned us into weapons. Now you'll learn what happens when weapons wake up. Lightning flashed across the horizon. She buried the chip beneath a rock, marking the spot with 3 stones, the operator's triangle. If she died here, someone might still find it. Someone who could finish what she started. Then she closed her eyes and dreamed of rain. Across the ocean in Germany, the world was already changing. Kira Ortiz stared at the decrypted screen, inside a safe-house basement near Ramstein Air Base. Lines of code scrolled endlessly. The files from the Athena drive had finally opened. Wilson sat nearby, leg bandaged, a pistol resting across her thigh. She looked older now, the war had carved years into her face. Kira scrolled through the data. It's all here. Payment trails, classified missions, direct transfers from defense accounts to private shell entities. Wilson leaned closer. Names. Kira hesitated. Generals, politicians, even contractors tied to humanitarian aid groups. They used everything: Red Cross routes, diplomatic convoys, all for cover. Wilson rubbed her temples. We can't go public with this. The second it hits, every agency in NATO will deny it. We'll be the villains. Maybe we already are, Kira said quietly, but the world deserves to know. Wilson frowned. And Maya, you think she's still alive? Kira's jaw clenched. She's out there, I can feel it. She tapped the table. We finish this, Danny. We get this to the oversight cell Maddox mentioned. If it's real, they'll blow the lid open. Wilson nodded reluctantly. Then we move at first light. Neither of them slept. The storm outside the safe house rattled the windows. It felt like the world itself was warning them. Back in the Afghan highlands, Maya's world had narrowed to heartbeat and breath. Rain hammered against the cliffs, turning the dust to mud. She moved under cover of darkness, following the old smuggler trails toward the north. Every ridge, every ravine was muscle memory now. But something changed around midnight. The radio, the one she'd turned off days ago, began to crackle. She froze, pulling it from her pack. The static pulsed like breathing. Then through the noise, a single word. Reeves. Her chest tightened. Identify. Maya, it's Wilson. We made it to Ramstein. The drive decrypted. You were right. Relief flooded through her veins. Kira. She's fine. We've got the data and backup copies, but Maddox's contact, the signal fractured, fading in and out. Compromised, we're moving again. They know we're here. Wilson, listen carefully, Maya said, crouching low against the wind. If you're burned, do not go dark. Broadcast, make noise. Visibility is survival. Wilson's laugh crackled through the static. Copy that. Never thought I'd hear the great Maya Reeves tell me to make noise. Then the line went dead. Maya stared at the radio. The sound of thunder rolled overhead. She knew what that meant. They were exposed. And she was too far to reach them. The first explosion hit half an hour later. She saw it even from miles away, a bloom of fire on the horizon, brief but unmistakable. Ramstein. Her heart sank. No. Her legs gave out. She dropped to her knees in the mud, the radio clutched in her hands. The wind swallowed her voice, but the grief that followed was silent, the kind that didn't scream, because screaming would mean accepting it. She didn't know who'd survived. She only knew she wasn't finished. The next morning, Maya found a downed drone wedged in the ravine, one of the recon units hunting her. She stripped its memory core, rerouted the power supply, and activated the onboard comms. The feed blinked alive, displaying encrypted transmissions. She bypassed them, searching for a pattern. Their coordinates, multiple pings. One tagged with her name. It wasn't military. It was something else, private encryption, high-tier civilian contractor protocol. And it wasn't tracking her location. It was tracking the chip. The one she'd buried. Maya's pulse quickened. They found it. She sprinted through the canyon, sliding over rock and mud, breath tearing through her lungs. The rain had nearly erased her marker nearly. When she reached the spot, she saw it immediately. The stones were gone. The ground disturbed. Someone had taken it. She spun, scanning the ridges, and saw the reflection of glass. A scope. A sniper. The shot came before she could move. The round hit rock inches from her face, shattering it. She dove for cover, rolling down the embankment. Another shot, then another. Dust exploded around her. Maya Reeves, a voice called through a megaphone, American accent, confident, cold. You've had your run. Hand over the data and we'll make it quick. She didn't answer. She crawled through the narrow wash, mud caking her hands. Every instinct screamed to fight, but she was outnumbered. She needed distance. Her knife slipped from its sheath as she crawled. The phoenix emblem flashed once before sinking into the mud. For a second, she froze. It felt like losing part of herself. But survival left no room for sentiment. She ran. Behind her, soldiers advanced, clean uniforms, no insignia. Contractors again, private army. Her own creation chasing her through the ruins of her loyalty. She reached the canyon's edge and jumped, landing hard against the far slope. Pain seared through her shoulder, but she didn't stop. The sound of rotor blades cut through the air above. Extraction unit inbound. They were closing in. Maya ducked into an old tunnel, Soviet era, collapsed at both ends. She crawled through dust and darkness until she reached the dead end. No exit, no escape. Her reflection flickered in a pool of rainwater at her feet, a face she barely recognized. Her breath steadied. She pulled a flare from her pack, lit it, and held it up. The red glow painted the tunnel walls like blood. They built you to vanish, she said softly, to the memory of every woman who had worn the phoenix. But not me. The roar of the helicopter grew louder above. She slung her rifle across her back, pressed a hand against the wound on her arm, and whispered, "Time to make some noise." She fired the flare upward through the cracks in the tunnel roof. The sky erupted red. Every sensor, every satellite, every watching eye would see it. A signal, a declaration. She wasn't dead. And she wasn't hiding anymore. Half a world away, Kira Ortiz woke to the sound of distant sirens. Her body ached, her lungs burned. The safe house was gone, reduced to smoke and silence. Beside her, Wilson was gone. She reached for her pack. Inside, one copy of the drive, damaged but intact. She looked toward the horizon, where the first light of dawn reached the sky. Somewhere, she knew, Maya was still alive. Kira stood, brushing blood from her face. "Okay, Captain," she whispered, "let's finish this." And for the first time, the world began to feel like it might listen. What do you do when the world calls you a traitor? And it's right and wrong all at once. The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. It fell across the highlands like ash from a burning sky. Captain Maya Reeves moved through it silently, her silhouette half swallowed by fog. Every step left a dark imprint on the rock, every breath clouded the air. She was heading north, toward a border that didn't exist on any map, a place where politics and ghosts blurred. Somewhere beyond those peaks, Kira Ortiz might still be alive. And somewhere behind her, death was catching up. The sound of the storm blended with rotors in the distance, a hunter's hum. She crouched beneath an outcropping of stone, scanning the ridgelines. No movement, no lights. But she could feel it. The net was closing. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small radio, its casing cracked, its antenna bent. Static whispered faintly. She turned the dial, hopping for anything. A voice. A signal. Nothing. Then, "Maya, if you're out there, they're coming for all of us." It was Kira, faint, distant, but alive. Maya's hand tightened on the radio. "Kira, say again, your location." Berlin's safe house, compromised, we lost Wilson. Her voice broke, then steadied. But I still have the data. I'm heading for broadcast, global feed. Maya's pulse quickened. No, they'll kill you before it uploads. That's the point. The line crackled and died. Maya stared into the rain. For a long moment she didn't move. Then she whispered, "You're not dying for me, not like the others." She rose, pulling her hood tight. The storm swallowed her shape as she moved toward the mountains, toward the last war she'd ever fight. In Berlin, dawn came gray and cold. Kira Ortiz walked fast through the empty streets, hood pulled low, rain soaking her jacket. The city felt alien, too clean, too quiet. She clutched a small drive in her palm, its casing scorched from the explosion at Ramstein. Inside it lived the ghosts of Athena, encrypted, wounded but alive. The building she was heading toward looked like nothing, an abandoned broadcast tower from the Cold War, forgotten by time. Perfect. She slipped through the rusted door, climbing the narrow stairwell until she reached the transmitter room. The air smelled of dust and ozone. She connected the drive to an old terminal, rerouted power, and prayed the system still had teeth. Lines of code flashed on the monitor. The upload began. 12%. 19. 43. Her fingers trembled. She wasn't afraid to die, she just didn't want it to mean nothing. Footsteps echoed below. She froze. Then she heard it, an American accent, sharp, commanding. "Secure the exits, she's here." Kira drew her sidearm, pressing her back to the wall. She knew the voice. Colonel Harrington, the man who'd once dismissed Maya at the base. "Ortiz," he called, "you think leaking stolen intel will save anyone. You'll start a war that never ends." Kira swallowed hard, her finger tightening on the trigger. Maybe that's what it takes. The footsteps grew closer. She turned back to the terminal, 72%. Almost there. Half a world away, Maya reached the airfield near Tashkent by nightfall. The rain had frozen into sleet, slicing her face as she moved across the tarmac. A private cargo plane sat idling on the far side, its pilot waiting, nervous. He was ex-intelligence, a man who owed her his life. When he saw her, he didn't ask questions. He just nodded. "You sure about this, Reeves?" he asked as she climbed aboard. "Airspace is hot. You'll be tagged the second you lift." "I'm already tagged," she said, strapping herself in. "Berlin coordinates now." He hesitated. "You planning to land or crash?" She gave a tired smile. "Whichever gets me there faster." The engines roared to life. As the plane lifted into the storm, Maya stared out at the black horizon. Lightning flashed, illuminating her reflection in the window, eyes hollow, face lined with scars and sleeplessness. She whispered to herself, "We all signed up to protect the innocent. Maybe it's time we start with ourselves." Berlin. 92%. Kira could hear them getting closer, boots on metal stairs, radios hissing. She backed toward the console, heart hammering. She barricaded the main door with a steel beam, but it wouldn't last. Harrington's voice came again, louder this time. "You're making a mistake. You release that data and people die, operatives in the field, allies, civilians." Kira shouted back, "Then tell them to stop killing people who don't deserve it." 98%. 99. Upload complete. The system beeped once, then everything went dark. Her stomach dropped. No sound, no hum, no signal. She hit the keys, nothing. The power was cut. The door slammed open. Harrington stepped inside, flanked by two soldiers, rifle raised. His uniform was soaked from the rain, his face hard. "It's over, Lieutenant." Kira met his eyes. "No, sir, it's just beginning." He motioned to his men, "Secure her." They advanced, but before they reached her, the wall behind them shattered in a burst of debris. A thunder of rotor blades filled the air as a helicopter hovered outside the tower window, its spotlight slicing through smoke. Kira shielded her face. And through the glare, a figure stepped from the chopper, black jacket, rifle slung, eyes like the storm itself. Maya Reeves. She fired twice. The soldiers dropped. Harrington dove for cover. Maya, Kira shouted. Go, Maya yelled back, tossing her a rope line. Get to the roof. Kira climbed, heart racing, as Maya provided cover fire. Harrington returned fire from behind the console, shouting orders into his comm. The air filled with chaos, bullets, rain, glass, the smell of burning wires. When Kira reached the roof, Maya followed, pulling the line free. The helicopter tilted dangerously, wind howling around them. You're alive, Kira breathed, disbelief in her voice. Alive enough, Maya said. Do you have it? Kira handed her the drive. The upload failed. They cut the power. Maya took it, eyes scanning the skis. Then we finish it somewhere they can't cut. The pilot shouted from the cockpit, We've got bogies inbound, 2 Black Hawks. Maya turned to Kira, Get in. What about? Now. The helicopter lurched upward just as Harrington emerged onto the roof, firing one last burst. Bullets sparked against the hull. Maya returned fire, shattering his weapon. He stumbled back, rain mixing with the blood on his sleeve. For a brief second, their eyes met soldier to soldier. He shouted something she couldn't hear, maybe an order, maybe a warning. Then he vanished into the storm below. The flight west was turbulence and thunder. The pilot shouted updates over the roar, fuel low, tail damage, radar interference. Maya sat beside Kira in silence, the drive clutched in her hand. Finally Kira spoke, Where are we taking it? Maya's voice was calm. Neutral ground, Iceland relay station. Maddox has contacts there. If the drive uploads to their cloud, it'll hit every major network at once. Kira stared at her. You really want to release everything. You'll burn everyone, including the innocent. Maya's eyes stayed fixed on the horizon. No one's innocent, not anymore. Kira swallowed hard. And what about us? What about us? If this goes public, we'll never go home. Maya turned toward her, expression unreadable. Maybe home isn't a place anymore. Maybe it's a promise. The chopper shuddered violently. Warning alarms screamed. Missile lock, the pilot shouted. Maya grabbed the railing, evasive. Too late. The blast hit the tail, spinning the helicopter violently. The world turned upside down. Metal shrieked. Fire erupted across the cabin. Maya, Kira screamed. Hold on. The chopper plummeted into the dark sea. Impact. Silence. Then black. When consciousness returned, it came in fragments. Water, light, pain. Maya coughed salt from her lungs, dragging herself onto a jagged shore. The wreckage burned faintly behind her, metal hissing against waves. Kira, she shouted. No response. She stumbled along the shore, searching through debris. Then she saw movement, a hand breaking the surface. She waded in, pulling Kira free, gasping and coughing but alive. Maya collapsed beside her, both of them trembling from cold and exhaustion. The drive somehow still in Maya's grip. She stared at it, blood and seawater dripping from her fingers. Kira looked at her, voice hoarse. Now what? Maya turned toward the horizon, faint lights in the distance. The Iceland relay tower, rising like a spine of steel against the storm. She smiled faintly, the kind that hurts to make. Now, she said, we tell the world what we've done. Lightning split the sky above them, framing their silhouettes against the roaring sea. And for the first time since the beginning, since the arrest, the betrayal, the lies, it felt like they were walking towards something that mattered. Not orders. Not redemption. Truth. Whatever it cost. Why does the truth always arrive after the shooting stops? Because when the noise dies, you can finally hear what you've become. The wind on the Icelandic coast was a blade. It carved through soaked uniforms and opened wounds with equal indifference. Captain Maya Reeves and Kira Ortiz trudged up the Blackrock slope, each step sinking into sleet and gravel. Behind them, the sea swallowed the wreckage of the helicopter, sparks vanishing beneath the waves like dying stars. Ahead, the relay tower stood alone against the sky, 100 meters of steel, humming with static, its antennae vanishing into cloud. It looked less like a structure, and more like a confession someone had tried to bury. Kira's voice trembled through chattering teeth. We won't get another chance, will we? Maya didn't answer. She could barely feel her hands. She just kept walking, the drive clutched tight against her chest, as if it had a pulse. When they reached the maintenance platform, Kira collapsed against the railing, coughing seawater. Maya forced the rusted control door open and stepped inside. Old circuit boards lined the walls, frost crept over every surface. A single console blinked weakly, running on backup power. "This is it," Maya said. "Uplink frequency still live." Kira stared at the flickering monitor. "How do you even know the code?" Maya exhaled, "Because Reed wrote it." She slid the drive into the port. The machine stuttered, whirred, then came alive, green lights crawling up the display like veins filling with blood. Athena Protocol / Secure Data Transfer active. Lines of encrypted text began streaming. Every mission, every falsified report, every lie that had made them soldiers without graves. Kira watched the upload bar creep forward. Once this hits the satellites, there's no going back. Every news feed, every defense channel. "I know," Maya said quietly. Outside, thunder rolled across the ocean. The tower groaned under the wind. Then faintly, the sound of engines. Maya's instincts flared. She moved to the window, 2 tilt rotors cutting through the storm, running dark, military pattern. They'd found them. Kira swore, "They're fast." Maya unplugged the drive, sliding it into the auxiliary port at the base of the transmitter. "Keep it running," she said. "I'll hold them." Kira caught her arm. "Maya, no, we finish this together." Maya looked at her, eyes clear despite the exhaustion. "You're the one who can tell the world what this meant. You survive. That's the mission now." Kira's grip tightened. "That's not an order I can follow." Maya almost smiled. "Good soldier." The first explosion tore through the lower deck, a shaped charge breaching the door. Floodlights sliced through the storm as black-clad operators stormed the platform. Their voices barked through the wind. "Captain Reeves, stand down, you're under arrest." Maya stepped into the doorway, rifle steady. "Not today." The first burst of fire shredded the railing beside her. She dropped to a knee, returned 2 precise shots. One assailant fell. Another stumbled, dragging his comrade back. But there were too many. Kira crouched by the console, shielding the drive with her body. Sparks rained from the ceiling as stray rounds hit the generator. "Maya," she shouted, "we're at 80%. "Hold it." A grenade clattered across the floor. Maya Dove caught it and hurled it back. The blast rocked the tower, shaking the steel under their feet. She felt pain bloom in her shoulder, a grazing hit, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. She was buying seconds now. That was all that mattered. Through the storm's roar, a new sound rose, a voice over loudspeaker. Cold, familiar. "Colonel Harrington." "Maya, don't do this. Think about what you're destroying." She fired into the dark. "I'm not destroying anything, Colonel. I'm setting it free." He hesitated. "You'll never clear your name." She laughed, breathless. "I don't need a name." Kira's voice cracked from the console. 95%. Maya ducked behind a girder, reload shaking in her hands. Bullets tore sparks from the steel beside her. She looked back at Kira's silhouette against the flickering monitor, hair plastered with rain, face lit by the glow of everything they'd lost. And for the first time since the beginning, Maya felt peace. A flashbang rolled into the room. White light. Silence. When she opened her eyes again, she was on her knees, ears ringing. A boot slammed into her rifle, kicking it away. Harrington stood over her, pistol aimed at her chest. "Enough," he said. "You made your point." Maya's vision blurred. "It's too late." He frowned. "What?" Kira's voice, weak but steady. "Upload complete." Harrington turned just as the console beeped. On the screen, the Athena emblem bloomed, the phoenix rising, then scattered into 1,000 data streams, shooting across the satellite grid. The world had just been given its first unfiltered look at itself. "No," Harrington whispered. He raised the pistol toward Kira. "Then none of you leave alive." Maya moved before he finished the breath. She lunged, driving her shoulder into him. The shot went wide. They struggled, slipping on blood and rain. The gun fired again, a sound swallowed by thunder. Then silence. Harrington fell. Maya staggered back, blood on her hands, she couldn't tell whose. Her knees buckled. The tower lights flickered. Outside, sirens wailed, not military this time, but civilian broadcasts catching the signal. Kira crawled to her, catching her before she hit the floor. "Hey, stay with me." Maya's eyes fluttered open. "Did it work?" Kira nodded, tears cutting clean paths through the grime. "It's everywhere. They can't stop it now." Maya managed a faint smile. "Good. Then we finally did something honest." She coughed, the sound wet. Kira pressed a hand to the wound. "We need med-evac." "No time," Maya whispered. "They'll be here. Don't let them spin it. Tell them the truth, all of it, even the part where we failed." "You'll tell them yourself." Maya shook her head. "Someone has to live to carry it, that's you." Kira's voice broke. "I can't do this without you." Maya's eyes softened. "You already are." Outside, dawn began to break, pale light spreading over the ocean. The storm was dying. Kira looked toward the horizon, then back at her commander. "What should I tell them when they ask who you were?" Maya exhaled, a ghost of a smile on her lips. "Tell them I was a soldier who learned the difference between silence and peace." Her hand went still. The wind through the open door sounded almost like applause. 3 days later, the world was burning, not from bombs, but from truth. News networks across continents aired fragments of the Athena files. Covert strikes on civilians, black budgets, erased personnel. Protests erupted in capital cities. Flags lowered. Generals resigned. The phrase "Athena lives" flooded the networks, a whisper turned into a roar. Kira stood on a balcony in Reykjavik, coat wrapped tight against the cold, watching the chaos unfold below. Her bandaged hands trembled around a cup of coffee she couldn't drink. Reporters had already found her face. They wanted interviews, headlines, redemption arcs. She gave them none. She just watched the sea and thought of Maya, of the woman who taught her that duty without conscience is just obedience dressed in medals. Behind her, a voice spoke, gravelly, worn. "General Maddox, they're calling you a hero." Kira didn't turn. "Heroes don't exist, sir. Just people who stay standing long enough to tell the story." He nodded slowly. For what it's worth, she'd be proud. Kira looked at him then. Was it worth it, the program? Maddox's eyes lowered. "At the time, I thought it was. I thought invisibility was power." He paused. "Now I see it was cowardice." They stood in silence, watching the storm roll back over the horizon. The world felt raw again, unfiltered, uncertain. Maybe that was how it should be. Kira set the coffee down, the steam curling away like memory. "What happens to us now?" Maddox gave a tired smile. "That's the thing about ghosts, Lieutenant. Once the world sees them, they stop being ghosts." That night, Kira walked alone to the edge of the cliffs above the sea. She pulled from her pocket the last remnant of Maya's knife, the phoenix pommel torn from the wreckage. The metal gleamed faintly in the moonlight. She knelt, placing it on the stone beside her, and whispered, "They tried to erase you. Instead, they wrote your name across the sky." The wind rose, carrying the sound out over the waves. And if you were there, if you listened closely, you could almost hear her voice again, calm and unyielding, carried on the wind. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. The tide came in, washing over the rock, over the emblem, over the past. And somewhere beneath that endless sea, the ghosts of Athena finally rested, not forgotten but free.